Allah Almighty, by His divine grace and His mercy, has placed us onto this earth, like I said last week, and He has granted us and blessed us and bestowed upon us a great duty and responsibility. And amongst these, or numerous responsibilities, and amongst these responsibilities, the most important duty and the greatest responsibility is that of the protection and the preservation of Iman. That is the most important responsibility upon a believer, is to protect and to preserve his Iman and the Iman of those that are around him, especially his family and his community. And with that, Allah has given us numerous other responsibilities. But a banda, a servant of Allah, cannot be successful. A servant of Allah, if you can please leave our discussions for outside the masjid, then we can continue with the lecture. Durood Pak, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyana, Maulana Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Maulana Muhammad wa ashabi wa barik sallim sallu alayhi. If you fulfill the responsibility and the duty in the court of Almighty Allah, then your dunya is beneficial to you and your akhirat is also beneficial to you. The pious servants of Almighty Allah, from the beginning of history and ever since man has come on this dunya, have always used a means in the court of Almighty Allah. And they have sincerely strived for the pleasure of Allah. And Allah Almighty, when He gave us these duties and these responsibilities, He gave us this so that when we fulfill them, and we then go back into His court by His command, then the servants of Allah are accepted as being the choice and the chosen and the accepted ones in the court of Allah. Yani their dunya becomes kamyab also and the akhirat becomes roshan also. But for everything, Allah has given us a means. There is always, everything is a means and a reason for something else. And when we understand this, then we will realize how important a wasila is. How important a wasila is, a means in the court of Allah. And we all know that there is no greater wasila than the beloved Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And you have the wasila of your parents and your mashayikh, and your ustads, and your amal, and all the other good things. All the virtuous things are wasilas. They are means in the court of Allah. And these means allow you to fulfill your responsibility and become closer in the court of Almighty Allah. But the greatest of all of them is the beloved Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And whenever people have gone through difficulties in life, whenever the believers have gone through difficulty in every zamana, in the time of every Nabi, what did they do? They used their means. They made dua through means. Whatever blessed, virtuous means they used. And because of that, Allah Almighty accepted it. Now, in Jummah time is limited, but I'm going to give you the gist of a narration today, one hadith sharif. The essence and the gist of one hadith sharif. And HAZRAT Sayyidina Imam Bayhaqi radiallahu anhu has quoted this hadith. And it is reported in this hadith that HAZRAT Sayyidina Imam Zuhri reports from HAZRAT Salim ibn Abdullah. HAZRAT Imam Zuhri reports from Salim ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhu, and he says that indeed HAZRAT Abdullah ibn Umar said, Salim ibn Abdullah says that indeed Abdullah ibn Umar said that I heard, Abdullah ibn Umar says, I heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying. Okay, Imam Zuhri takes from Salim bin Abdullah, he takes from Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar, and he says Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar said that I heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that a group of 3 people were once on a journey. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, this is hadith. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said a group of 3 people were once on a journey, And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that these people that I am talking about were a nation which came before you. So it was from the past ummahs. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said a group of these three people were traveling, and while traveling, they decided to take refuge in a cave one night so that they could rest, so that they could make some aram. So they took the refuge of a cave at night. Not like today where we have all the luxuries of this modern world. They travel through the mountains, they travel through deserts, they travel through difficult paths for the pleasure of Allah. So they were people from a past nation. There was a group of the three of them, and who is saying this? Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling about this past nation and three people from amongst them, that they were traveling and then they took refuge one night in a mountain cave so that they could rest. And when they went into the cave, what happened? When they went into this cave, as the three of them entered the cave, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, keep this in your mind. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, when they entered the cave, what happened? A huge rock, a huge part of the mountain broke. And it fell and came and blocked the entire mouth of the cave. And three of them are inside. Three of them are inside this little cave. And this huge rock broke from the mountain, the chatan, and it came and blocked the mouth of the cave. Can they come out? None of them have the strength to move that rock. They can't do anything. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that when this happened, these were believers of the past nation. So they said to each other that indeed, Qasam by Allah, there is nothing which can save us now. In other words, we are entrapped. We are blocked by this rock. Except that each of us should take the wasila of one of the virtuous things we did in our life. Except that each of us should take the wasila of one of the virtuous good deeds, neck thing which we did in our life, and then through that we should make dua in Allah's court. No direct situation even then. We should make dua in the court of Allah Almighty. And we should make dua that if we have done that deed solely for seeking the pleasure of Allah, not for show, not for anything else, for Allah, then Allah should accept our dua and allow us to come out of this cave. Because there was no way for them to come out. Huge rock. So Rasulullah Pak Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that one from amongst them said, my parents were very old, and I would never serve anyone in my house milk at night till I didn't serve my parents. Learn the adab of mother and father. Learn the adab of parents. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that this person said, the first person now when he was about to make dua, one of the three, he said, at night I had old parents, but until I didn't serve the milk to my parents to drink, I never used to give it to anybody else. And it is elaborated. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, to the extent that I did not serve it to my wife and my children and my servants or anybody in the house. First I served my parents, my old parents. He says, once I went out in search of trees. For in those days they cut trees and wood, not stove, nothing. So he says, I went in search of trees one day, and while on the search I came back very late. And when I got back, I'm being brief, I'm giving you the gist of the narration. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, he says, that man is saying that when he came back, he says, I got back and I went and I milked the animals, not like you open your fridge and take out the milk. Look at their zindagi. He milked the animals. Imagine today you tell your son, go and milk the cow and come in. Or tell your children, go do this. They pagal ho gaye. You know why? They don't value this. They've got everything too easy today, our children. So he went and he milked. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he says that I milked the animal and then I took the milk and I went to give it to my parents, although I was late. But when I entered their room, I found them sleeping. I found them sleeping. So he says, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, the man said that I held the bowl of milk in my hand and I stood there the entire night. Didn't move, because what if they woke up in the middle of the night? Stood there the entire night, and when the first light shone and the rays of light entered the room, my parents' eyes opened and they got up. And when they woke up, I presented that milk to them. He stood the entire night. How many of our children would? How many of your sons will do this? How many of you will do it? Think about it. So, he then says this. Entire waqia, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is saying. And then the person said, he even said when I saw them sleeping, it's in the hadith, that I felt inappropriate to wake them because it would be a sin to me to wake my parents from the rest. So he stood the entire night and he did this. And then when he presented and served the milk to them, they were satisfied. So at that time now he makes dua inside that cave where the rock is blocking. He says, "Oh Allah, if that action of mine was done solely to seek your pleasure, then remove us from this calamity and give us an exit." Rasul Pak Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that the moment he did that, the rock moved. The rock, that huge rock, moved, but it wasn't enough for them to pass through. So the second person amongst them, now the narrator says that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that whilst making dua, the second person that was there, he said that I had a paternal uncle, Chacha. I had a paternal uncle, my father's brother. And his daughter was very beloved to me. I loved her more than anybody. And I was always having this intention to make guna with her, because she was so beautiful. This is Hadith Sharif. So he says, but every time that I tried to do something with her, she kept herself very far away from me. Until once she was affected by a severe drought in where we lived. Meaning because of the drought she had nothing. So she came to me to ask for some financial assistance. And when she came, I gave her 120 gold coins. This man says. I gave her 120 dinars. And I said to her, on condition that you remain with me in privacy and give me power over yourself. At that stage she needed whatever she needed. And she accepted his condition. When they got together alone in the privacy of whichever place. And he says, I had full power and control to do what I wanted. I had full authority to make guna with her. We were alone in privacy at that time. He says, at that time, as I went close to her, she looked at me. She looked at me and she said, it is not halal for you to break the seal without the right which is upon you. Or she said, without his right which is upon you. There are two things said in the Hadith Sharif. He says, when I heard what she said, I immediately realized that if this happens, it's going to be guna. It will be a great sin. So I held myself back and I turned away. And then he picks up his hand and says, oh Allah, that day if I did that seeking your pleasure, then save us from this place and let the rock move. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, he says that and the rock moves even a little bit more again. But it's still not enough for all three of them to come out. They can't walk out, but the rock has moved 2 times. Then the narrator says, Nabi Akram Noori Mujassam Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam then says that the third person now started making dua. He said, oh Allah, I employed some laborers. This should be a reminder for those who employ people. I employed some laborers and I had paid all of them, whatever they had worked for that day or whatever. I had paid all of them their haqq. But one of them left without taking his money. He left for whatever reason. He left without taking this money. He's saying in Allah's court, oh Allah, he left. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is narrating, mentioning what happened in that zamana. Says that he left without taking, this third person says, oh Allah, he left without taking his money. I paid everybody else, but he left without taking his money. And the thing is that he never came back to work again. What are you going to do? So he says, oh Allah, I took that money which was due to him and I bought fruits and I sold that fruits and increased his money. You see? Not then come take it and put it in your pocket. I took that money and I bought fruits and I increased his money. In other words, I invested it for him. And I continued doing that until after a very long time he came to me. And he said, "O servant of Allah, where is my due? Where is that payment, that salary which you owed me for that day's work?" So I said to him, "These camels, these horses, these goats, these ghulams, all are your salary." He said, "Do not joke with me." He said, "I am not joking. Whatever was due to you, I used it for you. And I made it such that all this becomes yours also." He said, then I took the wasila of that. And I made dua in the court of Allah. And I said, "Oh Allah, if I did this solely to please you, oh Allah, allow the rock to now move." And the rock moved completely. And the three of them walked out of that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says. Now what does this tell you? And this hadith sharif, Imam Bayhaqi radiallahu anhu has quoted in his Shu'abul Iman. And at the same time, this hadith has been quoted by Imam al-Bukhari radiallahu anhu. And Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Muslim radiallahu anhu has quoted this hadith from Abdullah ibn Abdul Rahman. And he has narrated this hadith from Hazrat Abu Yaman radiallahu anhu. So this hadith is quoted so many times. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself tells you about this. Why is the Nabi telling you a hadith about the importance of using your deeds as a wasila? The importance of finding a means in the court of Allah that which the past people even did. He's teaching us this, that this is how you will be able to fulfill your responsibility. Not only are you learning the importance of the wasila here, and you are learning when the Nabi is telling you that use your virtuous deeds, and the Quran says the same thing. Seek a means to Almighty Allah. Where the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that these people used their deeds and Allah did this for them. So what if you use the greatest of Allah's creation, Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? But it teaches you that you have a responsibility. It also teaches you the power of dua. The power of dua. That when you make dua through wasila, your dua is accepted in the court of Almighty Allah. And it also teaches you the importance of being conscious of what is happening around you. Look at that person's adab for his mother. Look at that person who even shaitan was drawing towards guna. But when Allah gave him realization and tawfiq, he immediately stepped back. And look at that person who had the money of his worker, but he didn't go and squander and waste and use and abuse it, but he kept it and he benefited from it so that he may benefit that person one day when he comes. Something to think about. It's food for thought. It's very important for us to understand how we should live our lives and how we should fulfill our responsibility and our duty that Allah has given us in the dunya. But as I said, your greatest responsibility is protection of your deen and your iman. Allah give us tawfiq khair. Allah keep us with iman. Let us leave this world with iman. Those who are in our community, Allah grant them shifa kamil, shaka ajil. All those that are going through any difficulty, Allah remove their difficulties. Special dua for all those who have passed away amongst the Ahl Sunnah, Allah exalt them in Jannah. Dua for the Muslims of Palestine. Don't forget, continue making dua for them. Allah ease the difficulties that they are going through and the hardships that they are going through. And Allah keep us all with iman. Let us leave this world with iman. Reminder that Alhamdulillah we have received the proper shahadat of the sighting of the moon in person from direct witnesses. And Alhamdulillah, that means that Monday will definitely be Eidul Adha. Hafizah will announce the times, etc. And then we can take it from there, inshallah lazim. So once Afthab announces, you'll know what time to be here on Monday also. And don't forget that Sunday night, which means the Sunday day, will become the 9th, which is the Yom Arafah. So don't forget that day to keep Raza is very big blessings. And also the Takbir al-Tashriq from the morning of the 9th, Fajr of the 9th to the Asr of the 13th. Okay? So Sunday to Thursday. So continue with that as well. And just remember that on these days, if you make dua with sincerity, especially on that night of Eid, the night before Eid, whatever dua you make with that at that time with sincerity is accepted in the court of Almighty Allah. But don't forget the golden rule, wasila. Wasila, use your wasila. And inshallah lazim, Allah will give you success and your duas will be accepted. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us firm on mazhab muhazzab, mazhab al-sunnat, MASLAK AALA radiyallahu ta'ala an, wa ma alayna illa al-balagh.